paint all leaves.
So the first thing we're gonna need is, this is the Princeton Heritage number 10 round brush. This is a really good brush. It's a synthetic brush and it has a lot of spring to the brush, so you can get nice controlled brush strokes. And I'm just gonna start by painting the body of the leaf. Oops. So I'm gonna start by mixing this cadmium yellow and the Winsor lemon to create kind of a good yellow. I'm just gonna go and start from the base of the leaf, and I'm gonna work my way around the shape of the leaf. And I'm gonna keep the paint moving as I paint. We don't want to stop in the middle. We just want to keep painting so that the paint will flow and not start drying in the middle of it. We just want to keep working with it before it gets dry. So I'm going to add my leaf point here. And now I might add in some extra points to this leaf. Now I'm going to pick up this darker burnt umber color, and I'm going to start just adding a little bit to the tips of the leaves and letting it kind of soak in to the wet paint. Rinse my brush off a little, and I do want a little bit more orange. I'm actually gonna have a little bit of this burnt sienna. Just gonna add that here. I'm just gonna mix this. All right, I'm gonna mix this burnt sienna in, and then I'm going to bring it down from the darkest part of the leaves. And just let it blend in to the yellow. Just using a little bit more water on my brush to keep the paints moist. So now I have my basic leaf shape. I'm going to go back in and add a little more while the paint is wet to these little edges, just to give it a little So when the paint is wet, it's a good time to add extra pigment to it. That way, it just naturally will absorb into the color that's already wet, and then it will start to blend on the paper. Okay, now I'm gonna add the stem. And I'm just using a very light touch with my brush. Notice how I'm holding the brush almost at a complete vertical angle like this. So the more you hold your brush straight, the thinner you can get for the lines. Now, before I add in any veins, I'm gonna wait for this to dry. Okay, so now my leaf is dry and I'm going to add in some details to the leaf. So I'm going to use this Princeton Heritage No. 3 round, and I'm just gonna re-wet this. This is the burnt umber. I'm gonna re-wet that. And I'm gonna start loading up my brush. Make sure I get the palette nice and wet. You'll notice the feeling of the paint on your brush starts to become kind of liquidy, but not, you don't want it too runny. You want it concentrated, so you want to get a lot of paint on here. And then we're going to start adding in some veins to this leaf now that it's dry. And you just use a very light touch. And you can hold the brush at a vertical angle. You can just start adding in the veins. I like to turn my paper around so that I don't put my hand on any of the wet paint. So I always like to use a sheet that I can keep turning. So I think I'm going to add in another leaf right next to it. Just going to start adding in more leaves. So I'm just going to start with this burnt umber. And I'm going to turn my paper around to make it feel like the leaves are coming from all directions. And I'm going to load up my brush here. Just going to start adding in more leaf shapes. That's how we can fill the page. And one thing I like about these fall leaves is they have these little points to them. So they kind of have like 5 parts, but within the 5 parts of the leaf, you see they have these little smaller points. So I'm just gonna work my way all around. And just using my brush, I'm just gonna push and release. Push and release. Kind of like that one. So I'm gonna let this one dry. Let's give it a little stem, just a light touch. And then then I'm gonna start another leaf. Now I'm gonna pick up another color for this one. So I want this one to be a little bit more reddish orange. So I'm gonna add a little bit of this red here. And I'm gonna blend this in to the paint that I already have on my palette. So we get more of an orangey brown. So we get some good variety here. So I'm gonna add in another leaf. I'll start with the stem this time. I'm gonna do the first point. Now, as we go across the leaf, I wanna add in some yellow, so I'm just gonna pick up the yellow as I go. Just so it gives it a little bit of color variety. Flip it around, add in some more yellow here. Just gonna blend it across. Pull that leaf through. So I like the way that one's looking. I'm just gonna let that dry. Okay. Actually, I might go back into the edges, give them a little bit of a darker edge. Like I did with that one. And some of these too. And then what this does is it gives your leaf a little bit more depth, a little bit more variety. And all you're doing is using the same paint color, but you're going from a more concentrated version of it on top of the lighter version. So it's just a shift in the value of the color. It's just the going from lighter to darker on the edges. And that gives your eye some kind of visual interest when you're looking at the leaf. Just a really, really light touch. The great thing about these round brushes is they have such a nice fine point, so you can go large and then go small, all with the same brush. You can do a lot with just one brush. And I might even go back over to this leaf here. Go over this brown again, just on the edges. Okay, so we're gonna let these two leaves completely dry. I'm not gonna touch those anymore. And I think I might just add in one more leaf. So I'm gonna do kind of a middle yellowy orange color for this one. And I'm gonna use this long stem with the tip of my brush. And I'm just gonna go ahead and make 7 small leaves. And every time I dip my brush, I'm gonna grab a slightly different color paint. Just gonna blend it along. So when I press down, you get that bigger leaf shape. naturally. Let the leaves expand. Just press. And release. And then I'm going to do one bigger leaf at the very top. Adding a little bit of that reddish orange rusty color, which is perfect for fall. And now before this one dries, I'm gonna grab this dark burnt umber color and I'm just gonna go ahead and fill in the tips of the leaves. And it's better to do this while the paint is still wet. That way it'll start naturally blending and you won't get such a harsh transition with the color. So if you can still do this while it's wet, that's much better. And you don't have to do much. It doesn't take much paint, just a little bit, and you don't have to press very hard for this last part. You just do a light touch. And it gives it a nice visual interest. Okay. So I'm gonna let these leaves dry and then I will come back in and add the veins. Okay, so now these leaves are dry. I'm gonna just go ahead and add in the details. I'm gonna use this, this is the Princeton round number 3. Just gonna awaken the brush, spin it around, clean it off. And I'm gonna get my colors activated again here. This is still the burnt umber and a little bit of this burnt sienna. So we're just gonna go over the leaves with some lines. I'm just gonna use the tip of my brush like that. I want to make sure I have enough paint that's darker. And I'm just going to draw in some lines. Easy peasy. Sometimes it's easier to draw upside down. Or paint upside down. Paint draw. So I'm just gonna fill it out so that the veins just naturally go into the leaves. Just adding a few lines at a time. I like this color a little bit better. I think this is the darker. This is this one, the burnt sienna. So I'm just going back over some of the first lines because I think this is a nicer color. And let's do this one. So I'm just following the body of the leaves and trying to place the veins in the middle of each portion of the leaf. And as you get to the top of the leaf, the veins can get smaller. And I'm just using a really light touch. And I'm picking up a little bit more water just so my brush doesn't dry out. Okay. Now I'm gonna add some veins on this leaf over here, but I think I'm gonna switch to a smaller brush. So I'm gonna go with the really 3/0 brush. And I'm just gonna pick up the same colors I was using and do the same thing. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel. And if you want to know which supplies I use for all of my watercolor artwork, you can go to my description and look for the link for my watercolor supplies guide and get your free guide. Thanks for watching.